Hey everybody, it's Jim Halterman from TV Guide Magazine. I'm here today to talk Better Call Saul with Mr. Bob Odenkirk. How you doing, Bob?
Good. Hi.
Hello. First up, I want to remind everybody the SAG-AFTRA Foundation has a COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund. The fund is helping to support actors who are currently out of work due to all the closed film and television productions right now. It's helping people pay expenses such as mortgages and rent and utility bills and just buy groceries. So there are more details below this video, so please check it out. And if you need help, please reach out. Thanks so much. But now let's talk Better Call Saul, Mr. Odenkirk. This past season was so wonderful, and I want to go back to kind of the beginning of you playing this character back in the Breaking Bad days. I'm guessing you didn't have all this information about his life and who he was back in those days. Can you talk about what you thought of? I guess we only knew him as Saul back then, but what was your first impression of this guy and how you were going to play him?
Well, I didn't have any of this information about his backstory. So many aspects of it are invented for Better Call Saul. I really knew nothing more than what was written. And so what was written was his real name was James McGill, and that he was adopting this persona of Saul Goodman. It was all a front to attract a certain clientele, mostly what he referred to as the homeboys. And I guess he was looking for low-level criminals and drug dealers to service that part of the community, thinking, I guess, that he could make money off people who weren't that swift or who were in desperate need. Yeah. And that's who he was in Breaking Bad. And I always felt like, even at that moment, Walter White was particularly attractive to him because here was this guy with a somewhat stable life, as a dad and a husband and still married and with a suburban house and a job, who was going to be reliable and kind of show up every day and not do anything too crazy. And as a result, for Saul, maybe a steady stream of income, maybe even a lot of income, and something unlike everyone else he was trying to help or work with, or whatever. Help isn't really the word. Take advantage of. But outside of that, I thought he was a guy. I thought he was fun to play, but not a very likable person. A person who probably, when he gets done with work, I figured he goes to the strip club for food and a drink, and maybe interacts with the strippers with the delusion that they like him. And then he plays a lot of golf, and that he is alone and a sad guy who, that's what I thought he was, an empty, sad, middle-aged guy who is a user type in the world.
But I know as a viewer, I remember watching Breaking Bad when it first was airing, and I liked Saul. And I think because there was a different energy with that character than you had seen with Walter or Jesse or a lot of the other characters.
Well, he was fun to play. I mean, I had a good time. He seems to be having a good time. Saul is having a good time. He's making jokes all the time and being a wise ass, and he's very entertained with himself and with what he's doing. He finds it kind of, I think he finds it entertaining to be who he is. That's a fun person to play. Now we've gotten to know him as Jimmy McGill, and I guess there's an assumption that he's compartmentalized a big chunk of his humanity, and so maybe that's a little harder to justify the character that he is in Breaking Bad, and certainly the smile that he has when you meet him in Breaking Bad. We'll see how they come to terms with that. But I do think it's something that the writers, those are the kinds of things they think about. And of course, he's probably just fooling himself and fooling everybody. And that's a very much of a false front.
Yeah. I know as a viewer, it's one of those shows where we're constantly thinking about the other show. We're watching Better Call Saul, but Breaking Bad's always there because there's so many callbacks to that show. And
Yeah.
I know we're all kind of
Oh,
waiting
yeah.
for those worlds to meet. Do you have to keep a lot of the Breaking Bad things out of your head because you're playing him at an earlier time, or do you not?
You
Is it
know,
not getting away?
we were very lucky because in Breaking Bad, neither by plan or accident did they go to Saul's personal life or his home. There's so little filled in about who he is outside of his office and the various escapades he's on that it left a lot of room for invention and creation. So it's not too hard to see the Saul of Breaking Bad as a very compartmentalized presentation that he's making almost to the public, and then to sell himself to Walter White, and then that's all we need to know, because we never saw him make any other plans in Breaking Bad or do any other personal thing. And there were a few moments where he seemed to have a conscience, and he seemed to have a sense of a greater ethical kind of world or choice. So at one point he tells Walter White, I would quit if I were you. Maybe I would quit.
Yeah.
And that, is very surprising because Saul pretty much doesn't give a shit about what happens to Walter White. But in this moment, things have gotten bad. The stakes have gone up, and, he knows Walter a bit now, and, he's right. Walter should have stopped like 4 times in his journey. And if he could have stopped, he should have stopped. And then there's a moment where he encourages Jesse to go see Brock, and I always forget her name. Jesse's going out with that woman who's got a kid.
Oh, yeah.
He encourages Jesse to go see them. And that's also very much out of character for Saul. Right. Why would Saul give a shit about that relationship? He doesn't make him any money. It's zero. So those are 2 moments where we saw a little more humanity in Saul, but they're not hard to justify, and he never talks about why. Yeah. So, the only thing I can think of that will be hard to justify is when Francesca, his secretary, is walking away from the office in the first episode that features Saul. He makes some smarmy comment about her ass, and that doesn't fit with who he is that we know. And who's he talking to? He's talking to himself. Right. So why is he making that comment? I mean, there's no one to put on a fake front for. Right. So that one's a tricky one. So I think there's one thing that isn't overcome.
Okay. Well, and I've probably asked you this before, but I always wonder, how aware is he of what he's doing? I mean, he knows on the surface what he's doing, but the fact that he's burying who he really is underneath the Saul Goodman character, I always wonder, is that just something that's happened, or is it more conscious that we think about?
I think he's very conscious of it.
Yeah.
I think he's very in control of compartmentalizing a great deal of his life. I think he sees it, and we see this in Better Call Saul, he sees it as a solution to his problems. If I can take this part of me that wants to engage in questionable ethical behavior and trick people and con people and be very involved, self-promoting, and just choose, I'll just do that when I'm Saul Goodman, when I'm at work. I'll just let that run. That'll be who I am. I'll publicly be it. I won't hide it.
Yeah.
That then I can have that part of my inspiration and I can follow it, and I won't be really tricking people, because anybody smart can see that guy on the billboard. I mean, you can just see I'm a salesman. I'm a fake, So it's a way to. I think it's a very conscious thing. This compartmentalization and this performance that he's doing.
That's all great though. I love how you think about this character so much, and we're watching it as a viewer. I'm always thinking, how aware is he is, and the relationship with Kim. It's kind of the heart of the show in a lot of ways because I think we're worried about her, we're worried about him, and we want that relationship to survive. But I feel like in some ways, like there's no way it can. But it's gone on longer than I thought it would. What he is very important to Jimmy, but the question's always like, well, what becomes more important to him?
You mean Kim or his career?
Yeah, basically where he's going as Saul or Kim. And, by the end of season 5, you're thinking, oh, she may be going along on this journey more than we think that she will. But can you talk about just that relationship and, I guess his priorities are?
Yeah, I will say that when this started, but Better Call Saul started, the question was, who is Jimmy McGill? I mean, who is this guy who chooses to be Saul Goodman, and what is motivating him, and exactly what's going on? Kind of what we talked about just a minute ago, which is, does he know he's a liar and a con man, or is it accidental, or can he control it? And so what they sort of showed us, from what my point of view is they showed us a guy who can't help himself, feels shame about being who he is, but then decides to embrace it and be kind of open about it. And by doing so, make it ethically acceptable and sort of like, he can forgive himself because he's being very open about it, and he can allow this. So now we know who he is. I think we do. And I think now the question is, who is Kim? I mean, to me, the big mystery that they've been flirting with for 5 years, with little glimpses of Kim, compromising herself ethically and participating in con jobs and laughing about it and then feeling bad and scolding Jimmy. And now we got to this point, especially in the very end of the very last scene of season 5, where you go, wait a second, who is she? Yeah. Is she just a total fake? Is all this upstanding Kim Wexler, I'm going to do it the right way, I'm going to show everybody I can be the most dignified, smartest, hardest working lawyer in town, or is she not that at all? And it's just a front, and where's she going and what's going on with her? So I feel like, look, I like that they built a show around my character. And I do think there's a lot of fun to be had in seeing what happens to Saul, I mean, what happens after Breaking Bad and what happens right here. Yeah. Now, as the heat rises between Jimmy McGill and his life as Saul Goodman and Kim and her desire to be an important person and a publicly kind of respected person, and but I think the real mystery now is, who is she?
Yeah,
it'll be fun to see what happens to Jimmy, but the mystery is, what's going on with that woman? Who is she?
I rewatched the season 5 finale last night just to prep for this, and I realized it's almost as shocking as what we see play out with the failed attempt to kill Lalo, with Kim under a sheet with Jimmy saying, well, we should do this to Howard, and she has plans, and he's like, well, no, we can't do that, and she's like, yeah, we can. And you're like, oh,
I don't know what's happening there. I mean, I can't. The way these guys work, they have a term called schmuck bait. We don't do schmuck bait. And what it is if I'm understanding it correctly, we don't write a false danger or choice that we really are just dangling out there to scare the audience or to tantalize you or tease you. We don't do that. If I'm understanding correctly, I don't speak for the writers. it's that thing of like, you can't pull a gun without using it, right? If you pull a gun, at some point somebody's got to use it. And her wild hair, ethically slippery energy and attitude at the end of season 5 to me is like, well, I mean, you got it. Now you got to go somewhere with that, because that can't just be a tease where for a moment she's presenting herself as being cunning and mean-spirited or cruel. But rather there's got to be something more to it that's real.
Yeah, I think that's why people love Breaking Bad and why they love Better Call Saul, because we know we're not going to get played. If that stuff's coming up, there's a reason.
But it's rarely the reason you thought it was.
Correct.
And that's what's great. Is like, yeah. Oh, I see. You made that. That makes sense now. It's not exactly what I thought it would be. In fact, oftentimes it's kind of a richer discovery than the surface it looked like. So on the surface, it looks like right now that Kim is also a con man, a con person, and that we're going to find out that really that's all she ever was, and that this whole thing she's been doing is a front too. But of course, that can't be it. That would be too simple, and it would be kind of like say that you wasted 5 years.
Right.
So they would never do that. But it's something that will make her choice in that moment true and make sense, and yet not be the solution that's obvious or simplistic.
I love it. Let's look back at season 5 a little bit. When the script shows up for you for the Bagman episode, what goes through your head? One, Vince is directing it, but it's a different episode.
Well, I certainly didn't think it would take 14 days in the desert. I mean, I thought you could probably shoot it in 11 or 12.
Right.
Or 10 even. I mean, we're supposed to shoot our episodes in 9 days. Yeah. And this was 18 all told. But it was, necessary. I mean, that was very hard to do. And I mean, what goes through my head is this is awesome, because I have been extremely thankful at the audience willingness to watch us play out sometimes very incremental changes in the characters and plotting and plot development, and a very kind of interiorly played journey and dynamic. It's a small show. I think in a lot of ways it's smaller than Breaking Bad in many ways, but we still have our moments. Definitely, we have our moments of violence and sort of big choices, just fewer than Breaking Bad. And it's more idiosyncratic, more offbeat than Breaking Bad, which was as my friend Jeff Garland said, it's a midlife crisis. That's what it is. And you can, it's a pretty intense one, but that's what it is. Compounded by, he's going to die and he really feels it. And he's got to make his mark before he dies. But this is more of a individualistic and offbeat thing. And people have been so great. So when an episode like 508 comes along that takes place in the desert, and there's guns, and there's an ambush, and there's a journey through the desert, and I'm so thankful to give the audience a lot of fun to watch, a fun adventure to watch. And people, I'll never completely understand why people have been so willing to watch us take these people apart. I do think we owe most of it to Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad got people to watch closely for small choices. And our show would be nothing if you didn't watch for small choices and small moments. And secondly, it ended before people were done with it. So we had this wonderful energy to start with that was completely impelled by the fact that Breaking Bad ended. People could have easily done 2 more seasons of that or more.
Oh, yeah.
So because it ended early, we just had this, you could feel this great energy that got people to hang in there with us and stick with the show.
Yeah. So with 508, did you guys shoot it in order? Because your skin changes, you know.
Yeah, I'd say we mostly shot it in order. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
And how did Mr. Gilligan? I know he's directed before, but this episode must have had challenges.
Oh, it was so hard.
Was it helpful having him as director?
Yes, it was so helpful. So
Yeah.
helpful. I mean, number one being, you can't shoot that in 9 days. And any hired director would have a much harder time making that argument to the production that we just need more time in order to do this right. But Vince has so much cachet for having created Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul with Peter Gould. He has so much power, and he's not indulgent at all. I mean, he's a hard-working guy who just packs as much in as he can. And but that you couldn't do that if we didn't get the support from AMC and Sony that we needed to get. And I think we could only get that with Vince directing. Yeah. On top of which, he's a great director. I mean, he makes great choices, and they're evocative and motivating and economical in the end, and just great.
Well, and I saw that episode as one that you really see Jimmy and Mike kind of bond for the first time. We kind of know their relationship later in the timeline, but how was that to play those scenes with Mr. Banks? Because you guys had some really great scenes.
Look, man, this guy's the best. I mean, Banks is the fucking best. I mean, he loves that character. He just has a great time playing that character. And he's the most professional actor, you know, Michael McKean. These guys are troopers and great pros, and being around them is awesome because they know what they're doing. They get to it. They have a freedom to create because they have confidence. And at the same time, they know what matters. They know what matters in the scene, and they get it. And Banks is amazing and a blast. I love him. I love him so much. You know, look, I love this whole cast. What a great group of people. I got very lucky. You're going to spend 5 years, 6 years with these people. You better find good people that are fun to be around and who you care about. And that's what we have. We have a great group.
Yeah, I won't make you predict anything you think will happen in the last season, but what are your thoughts on wrapping up this journey?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I can tell you as a fan what I would like to see.
Sure.
I would like to see. I don't think Kim can be a part of Saul's world.
Yeah.
I think that would be. I'd be very surprised if he goes home to her at night. Mm-hmm. I just don't think she can, and I don't think she's a con man herself. I think she isn't unfamiliar with that, clearly, and I think she's not particularly afraid of it. She may not like it, but she's not afraid of it. It's not foreign to her. Jimmy and the way he behaves when he's being Saul is something she must know from her childhood. That's what I believe.
I
don't know that for a fact. I just...
Right.
But I don't think she can be a part of his life. And I don't think they can kill her off because I think that'd be too easy.
Right.
And so I don't know what happens there. I'm sure it's tragic and hard as hell. And then I would like to see Gene after his Cinnabon breakdown.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him come out of hiding.
Yeah.
I think people can do that, and I don't know who he'd be, but I'd like to see it happen.
Yeah, and those little bits that we get every season, I can't wait to see the
Yeah.
next round.
Be
All right,
interesting to
Bob.
see. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me and digging deep a little bit into the show. And I hope you guys get back to work sooner than later so we can see how it all's going to wrap up.
You got it,
All right.
Jim. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much, Bob.
Take care.